Hello again, friends. Ed Harold, psyched to be with you for another Life with Breath Expert Series. Hi again, friends. Super excited to be with you. Today we have an amazing guest on the Life with Breath Expert Series who's doing some wonderful transformational work in what might not be a normal type of way, getting folks back out into nature, breaking out of quarantine and getting out into this great Mother Nature. And before we introduce this week's dynamic guest, let's just do a little centering and bring ourselves present into our body if we could. So in your own way, straightening your spine, anchoring your feet and your coccyx bone down into the energy of Mother Earth. Let your shoulders fall away from your ears and temporarily suspend the to-do list and everything that we need to get done to feel satisfied. And just tune your awareness into the flow of diaphragmatic breathing. Slow motion inhale, slow motion exhale. And just let your body receive this breath. Just let it accept the breath. And as you begin to breathe slower, see if you can stay on the exhale a little bit longer than the inhale without straining. A lot of folks ask, how long should I exhale, Ed? You should exhale long enough so that you don't rush the next inhale. For those of you familiar with Ujjayi breathing, the ocean sounding breath, begin to valve the air through the top of the throat. Allow the breath to move deeper through the mind and body, from the soles of the feet to the crown of the head, and continue to unwind where we might have been a little too wound up. Relaxing the eyes and jaw completely and allowing the top of the tongue to rest on your upper palate. And then once you find a rhythm to this, add a brief retention after the inhale is complete and a brief retention after the exhale is complete. And see if you can wedge your awareness into a blank space, a black space in your mind where there isn't any memory. There's no visualization distraction. There isn't any narrative in language. And begin to train the brain to move into these blank gaps of time and space without feeling vulnerable. Notice how quickly you can master this and how those brief little holds amplify the breath's ability to break up some of the parts of our psyche where we could be resisting growth, where we might be in denial, and these will begin to soften, and we'll find a newfound strength of our value, what we bring to the world, and what we allow the world to bring to us. So there's always an equal exchange of energy. Go through one more round of slow motion inhale, hold for a couple moments, slow motion exhale, hold the breath out a couple moments, and just notice the interplay between the mind and body, the in-breath and the out-breath. And just to finish this up, you can customize this little centering. For those of you watching this in the afternoon, close off the right nostril Inhale slowly up the left nostril, close off, release, exhale right. Go through several rounds of this technique. For those of you watching in the morning hours, closing off the left nostril, inhaling slowly, right nasal channel, left prefrontal lobe, close off, release, exhale left. See how you can customize the exchange of energy to counterbalance what's going on in the external environment that is animating you at this moment of your life. And notice the deeper you can get into your mind, the more safety, resiliency, and centeredness you have for all things in life. And there's a deep sense of gratitude that you're here on earth right now, and you're part of the solution, not the problem. Finish up the breathing. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Exhale out through your mouth with a sigh. Become fully present. Oh, man, and we are going to have a great few minutes together today. We have a master teacher from the East Coast. Mr. Micah Mortali is with us. And I met him back in the Stone Ages in the 90s in Kripalu Center, the largest yoga center in the world. And I knew right when I first met him, he had that vibe that, you know, I don't know whether it was all planned out and scripted in his mind yet, but he was going to make a profound statement in his life to not only help himself, but help others transform themselves in their lives. So welcome, Micah.
Hey, Ed, thanks. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're the best, man. And Mike is an author of Rewilding, Meditation Practices and Skills for Awakening in Nature. It's published by Sounds True. His life work is reconnecting modern people with restorative powers of nature through mindfulness in the great outdoors. Micah is the founder of the groundbreaking Kripalu School of Mindful Outdoor Leadership at the renowned Kripalu Yoga Center for Health in Massachusetts. Mike is a 500 hour level Kripalu Yoga teacher, a level 2 mindful outdoor guide, and is in wilderness first aid certified. He has studied with Tom Brown Jr. at the legendary Tracker School in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey and holds a master's degree in health arts and sciences from Goddard College. Micah leads trainings and corporate events, wilderness retreats, and seminars on rewilding and mindful outdoor leadership at Kripalu and across the New England area. He lives in the beautiful Berkshire hills of Western Massachusetts with his beautiful family. Let's dive into this. Rewilding. Let's get folks up to speed with what you're doing. What are you presenting to folks, and what are you bringing to the transformational space with this rewilding?
Well, rewilding is a way to think about addressing some of the negative impacts of modern life. You know, the average American spends more than 11 hours a day on a screen, over 90% of their lives indoors. Modern kids today, the statistics from Great Britain, I think it's probably analogous or comparable to the United States, but kids in Great Britain spend less than an hour, spend less time outside than prison inmates. Prison inmates have to get an hour of fresh air exercise outside. You know, we're very, very disconnected in modern life from the environments that we evolved in as a species. And rewilding is a practice, it's a philosophy, it's an approach that basically says, hey, my body, my ancestors, like we didn't evolve, you know, in temperature controlled spaces and 72-degree environments, sitting most of the time, staring at a flat screen, eating processed food, having all of our information processed. Like we didn't evolve as domesticated creatures like this. We evolved out there in contact with the seasons and the textures and the smells and the sounds and the flavors and the intensity, of the living earth. And could it be that some of the problems that people are struggling with these days, the depression, the anxiety, the health issues, like, could some of this all be because, we're living this domesticated version of life that really is, in some ways, kind of, you can look at it almost as captivity. We're living these captive lives where we're living on the clock, we're living out of the screens, and we're not experiencing freedom of movement, freedom of expression, freedom of thought. And rewilding is this practice of, okay, here, this is our current situation. We're indoors all the time. We're chained to our computers and our phones, and we're not feeling good, right? We know people are depressed, they're anxious, they're struggling. What if we just got outside? What if we went out and we took our shoes off and we walked in the grass? What if we went and we sat by a stream and we just stopped and listened? What if I picked up a bow and arrow and got outside and learned how to shoot a bow and arrow again, or climb a tree? What if I started a garden and started eating food like that I pulled out of the dirt myself? So it's this very, very big, rewilding is just this massive approach. There's so much to it, so many ways it can be customized for modern people. It can be as simple as, just taking your yoga practice outdoors. Or it could be a lot more. It might be like, hey, I want to actually buy some land and have a little off the grid cabin and actually take responsibility for where some of my food comes from, and really start connecting with circadian rhythms and seasons in a more ancestral way. So it's a big practice. It's a big inquiry. I enjoy it, and I enjoy sharing it with people.
How are the programs going for you? Do you enjoy being back out there and being that facilitator in the beautiful backdrop of the Berkshires?
Yeah, I love it. During the pandemic, Kripalu closed for a year and a half. So I just started my own business, Shire Quests, and I started just guiding on my own and taking groups out. And so I've been able to just keep guiding, outside. It's a great place to be, and just taking people out. And but being back at Kripalu, it's great. We're reopened, and next year we're going to start doing trainings for the School of Mindful Outdoor Leadership in person again. So we've been leading those online. We're in our third delivery of online training to help people become mindful outdoor guides. And but we're going to be back in person next year, and it's going to be awesome.
I live out on the West Coast. I live up in northern Utah, and I know you're up in the mountains in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. It's been an amazing fall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been great out here. How's it been out where you guys are?
I mean, it's been good. It's the falls have been unpredictable, in recent years. So some falls it'll be like really hot, right up into November, and this year it's been very temperate. It's kind of been right in the middle. We haven't had a first frost yet, but the temps are getting down into the 30s now. It's going to be happening soon. And I've been outside quite a lot this fall. I had a rewilding intensive I did about 2 weeks ago, 5 nights outdoors, and I've been out with some clients camping out. I've been camping out quite a bit this October, and it's been awesome. But we've had a lot of rain too. So every time I've camped out, just been pouring rain, at least for 1 or 2 nights, and a lot of wind. So there's been, for me, it's been a lot of connecting with the element of water and really enjoying just how powerful the element of water is and connecting with it. So that's been a big theme for me this fall.
Yeah, I think the water has an amazing effect on our nervous system, especially when we're coming into it with high states of anxiety and psychological man-made time contractions and stress, and just watching the water and how it's just this everlasting flow that seems to have its own natural rhythm based on the drainage or the pitch that it's in. And it just seems to be it's a perfect medicine for where our flow might be a little disturbed.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'll often tell people, it's one of the things I kind of wrote about a little bit in the book was, I just think that the elements are the greatest teachers of truth and wisdom that there are. If you want to learn how to meditate, just go sit by a stream or go to the ocean. Just go to water. Water will teach us everything about meditation, and it's funny. It's like, we all know, like the Buddha, Siddhartha attained enlightenment, like sitting under a tree, and I think sometimes we forget, like, all these practices, the ancient yogic practices, these were developed by people who were not in yoga studios. They were not inside at all. They were out in wild places. They were in the mountains, in the deserts. They were sitting by rivers. They were learning these things directly from the source. And that's what we try to do in the School of Mindful Outdoor Leadership. That was my whole thought process when I developed it was, we need to actually go back to the roots of where what is the source of, of mindfulness? Like, what is the source of the contemplative world? It's outside. It's out there.
Yeah. Back when I was younger and I was in the yoga studio game and, all of that, I always had the thought of like, okay, let's leave the studio and let's go down to the beach. Let's go down to the ocean. And early on, when I would take people outside, myself as the facilitator or the holder of the container, it's great going outside, but there's a whole different energetic parameters that you have to hold together for everyone to really feel safe, because there's so much more energy. There's so many more negative ions. The whole environment, your nervous system is firing off. Do you notice the difference? Like when you go outside compared to inside, it's like everything is like up and you're like, whoa.
Totally. So here's a story. So this morning, I had a group of 20-something people up in the forest at Kripalu, and we were doing a mindful hike. And we went up to this beautiful place where there's a waterfall and massive trees. And I had everybody in their sit spot, which is a practice where you go out, you sit on the land, you keep your eyes open, and you just really tune into the energy of the place, and you are aware of movement. You sink in, you become a part of the environment. And we were probably 2 or 3 minutes into the sit spot when I heard the sound of a massive tree fall right where everybody was. And I jumped up and was running over to where it happened, and luckily, no one was harmed. It didn't hit anybody. But to your point, and we talked about this as a group, we talked about the difference. When you're in a yoga studio, a bear's not going to walk right through class. But when we're out having a mindful outdoor experience, that could happen. And so it is a different kind of container. It's a different kind of experience. Yeah.
You really have to be a master facilitator like yourself to hold all that together and remove as much of the yellow flags as you possibly can, while knowing that Mother Nature's in charge to begin with. So kudos to you, man. Bravo, because it is a skill set that I don't think a lot of the guests realize, like the attention to detail, while at the same time you're surrendering to the experience.
Yeah. So there is a there is an and I think that is I have a lot of faith in people's ability to adapt and to have resilience from those kinds of experiences. And certainly we use the breath, quite a bit, and so I'll always guide long exhalations, when I'm guiding a mindful outdoor experience. And, the whole, as we walk through the forest, the emphasis is always on really slowing down, paying attention, slowing our breath. And, when something like that happens, one of the first things we'll do is we'll go back to modulating our breathing, going back to the parasympathetic. And one of the cool things about like being out in a forest, and one of the things I talked with the folks this morning when the tree fell, was that what's amazing is something like that'll happen and the sympathetic nervous system will get, all fired up, fight or flight. But then we just bring our attention back to the flowing water. We look up as the wind is whooshing through the hemlocks and the light is dappling through the forest. And the environment itself is restorative and helps us come right back to that parasympathetic tone. And that's really what's so cool about when we are in those environments that we evolved in. One of the things we've learned is that, these environments, when we're able to go into soft fascination and look at the wind blowing through the grass or the trees or listen to the water, that the body and the nervous system are able to just sink right back into the parasympathetic. So it's, in some ways it's like good training for life. Those things are going to happen. You're going to have that fear response, just like in a yoga class when the teacher holds you in that posture for a long time and you start to have that, that wave of experience really starts to build up and your mind wants to jump off the wave. We can kind of breathe with and find our center again out there.
Yeah, it's great. What kinds of rewilding tips can you share with folks to enjoy during this fall as we head into early winter?
Oh, I mean, it's such a fun time to, rewild. I mean, this time of year right now, fall, there's a few big themes this time of year. I think so. One of them is we're kind of heading into that time of year when we can really work with hygge, the Nordic practice of coziness and warmth, right? So this is the time of year when fire meditation is so awesome, and if you can't have a fire, then I always recommend folks get like a nice fat beeswax candle, and toward the end of the day, as you're unwinding, some nights you might try just eliminating all electric light in your home and just letting the light, like as the sun goes down early, just embracing that it's getting dark early and lighting your beeswax candle, having a cup of peppermint tea, and just kind of aligning with the circadian rhythm of this time of year, right? Like letting the brain just start to go into that melatonin phase as it gets darker, just one night a week. It's such a beautiful practice. And then when you start to kind of yawn around 7 or 7:30 as you're reading your book, like see if you can just go to bed at that time when you naturally start yawning,
Right.
That can be a really great. It doesn't sound like rewilding, but it is, because it's aligning with what's actually, it's like bringing our bodies into harmony with the season. Another big theme this time of year is, the hunt and the gather. This is that time of year when, all the animals on the land are really packing on the calories. They're beefing up for fall, and it's a time when people have always either been out hunting or been out gathering and harvesting the garden. So it's a good time of year for that. It's a good time of year, whatever your practice is. It's a good time of year to think about gathering and storing food. So it could be good canning time. It's certainly a good time to get out there and, whether you're, gathering up acorns or hickory nuts or you're hunting, whatever it might be, like this is an amazing time of year for that, to connect with food and where food comes from, and to do it reverently and with all of our heart, and to do it in a very mindful and caring way. Fall's a powerful time for that.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about my Kripalu experience was obviously the pranayama, and it started with Yoganand, and then there was many, many teachers who fell in alignment with his techniques. And when I think about, I watch some of the archery stuff that you do. So I love watching it on social media. That you do a great job with that. How's the pranayama woven in to archery skill?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, I've been shooting bow and arrow since I was like a little sprout. Started as a real little kid, and it's I've always loved it, and it's such a deeply ancestral skill. So, no matter what continent your ancestors are from, they shot the bow and arrow.
Right.
Guaranteed. It's in us. And there is a deep spiritual power to traditional archery. So I just shoot a bent stick and a string. I don't really shoot compound. I just shoot very, very ancestral, very intuitive. So I don't have any sights on my bow. I shoot a bow and arrow the same way that you throw a baseball. I just kind of look and I let my unconscious mind do the aiming. And the breath is a really important part of it. So, essentially when I'm shooting, my practices, and this is something that I just developed over many years. This is my own unique, I'm sure others do this too, but it's just something that I've developed. So I go out into my backyard either in the morning or at the end of the day with my quiver, my arrow, my bow, and my target. And I have this beautiful view of the mountain. And I walk out and I just plant my feet and I take a couple of big breaths. And I let out a few long exhales. And I just look up and I look all around. I look at the mountain and I just reach out with my senses and my feelings to the whole place, because I want to just feel everything that's here. Part of that is because I also want to make sure there's nothing behind my target that I don't want to hit, So I just want to be there. I want to have situational awareness. But at the same time, it's also I'm just connecting. And each time I exhale, I just try to empty my cup and let go and just come into that place of the witness. And when I'm taking those big breaths, I'm also letting my awareness be super expansive. I'm just kind of taking everything in, because in a moment I'm about to become laser focused. So it's a contrast of really, really big, and then all of a sudden it comes into a laser point. I put my focus on the target. I inhale, I draw back to my anchor, and I release with the exhale. So that's how I shoot. Inhale, anchor, and let go. And you know what? There's this story from the Ramayana, and that I'll share real briefly. So we all know Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita, was a great legendary archer of ancient times. And when he was a child, his teacher was Drona, who, if you've read the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is on one side of the field, and across the field, it's said in chapter 1, he sees Drona across the field from him. So I didn't really realize when I first read the Bhagavad Gita many times, what a close connection Arjuna and Drona had. Drona was like his father, was his archery mentor, trained him from a child. And here he is looking across the battlefield at Drona. Well, when he was a kid, Drona had all the young archers together, and they were all gathered. And Drona had taken a stuffed parrot and put it high up in a tree. And it had a little button for an eye. And he said to the children, he said, "You're going to shoot the eye of the parrot. And I've put it high up in the tree." And he asks each of the children that are gathered there, one by one, he says, "What do you see when you look up in the tree?" And the children say, "I see the parrot. I see the eye of the parrot. I see the clouds. I see the sky. I see butterflies. I see the wind," right? He goes through all the children. They all say all of these different things that they see. And then Arjuna comes up and he says, "Arjuna, what do you see?" And Arjuna says, "I see the eye of the parrot." And he says, "What else do you see, Arjuna?" And he says, "Nothing." He says, "Shoot." And Arjuna shoots and he hits the eye of the parrot. Yeah. Love that story. I think that's one of the beautiful things about traditional instinctive archery is you can experience a state of total absorption in the practice that is very, very powerful. It's great too, because when you release the arrow, you get immediate feedback on your technique, your focus, because you immediately know when I drop into that zone and I become the target, and there's no me shooting, there's no target, it's just a union, it always goes right into the bullseye. And if I'm not totally in that zone, it doesn't.
I think that is so underrated in regard to how good this is for us when we could be physiologically or psychologically stuck. If you're starting out with taking in as much of the landscape as you possibly can through your sixth sense perception, and over a period of a few minutes, you begin to narrow your focus to one pointed focus, and you've gone the whole scope of how far you can see out and feel out to how little you can zoom in on something. The mind, that's as far as the mind can travel. It can travel like a telescope, and it can also work like a microscope. And when we begin to use our eyes like that, there's such a profound effect on everything else in our life. And you can begin to see how everything else we're trying to achieve in our life works in the same paradigm of that.
It's a great point. Yeah, it's a really great point. You can certainly apply it to everything else. You know, it's I've always felt like I've had experiences, I'm sure you have too, of, you know, moments when we get into that state of just absolute focus, and it's a very magical place, and things happen there. And I don't know, my personal belief is that, you know, we are divine creators. And when we can get into that state of supreme focus, there's pretty much, I feel like we are unlimited, you know, in that state. And it is one of the things that is, I'm the most grateful for in my life of spiritual practice, to have had some moments of those types of experiences, you know. And I like the idea of being able to offer experiences where others can access that power that's within them, you know, that potential. And it's a very, it's something that I think is healing, because there's a lot of ways in which I think, you know, not just modern life, but I'm sure over the millennia, that it's easy for people to feel small and powerless. And it's quite a transformational experience when you can feel that sense of what you are able to do. And so sometimes, like with my rewilding stuff, it also comes into play with like birthing fire, you know, when, you know, people will be out there and, you know, they'll struggle, you know, for a couple of days to build that bow drill kit. You know, they're going to try to birth fire, and, you know, they struggle. They got to carve. They got to learn so many different things: how to carve the wood, how to shape the wood, how all the dynamics work. And then they got to figure out the body mechanics and everything of rubbing this wood together and how they're going to make a fire. But when it happens and they have that moment of like breathing fire to life in the palm of their hand, and they feel that connection to their ancestors, and what a transformational step this was for human beings. It's just an unforgettable thing.
Just has to make people feel so good on such a level, also very quickly. You know, a lot of folks, you know, everybody wants to get better and transform, but nobody wants to change. I get it. You know, we're comfortable where we are, and we're habit-driven creatures. I don't think there's anything faster in the opportunity to transform to a more quality sense of awareness than just getting outside, slowing down, and paying attention. You just need to show up, and the work will be done for you. I don't think it can be any easier than that. You know, getting people out of their own way, and then not really over-promising, you know, under-promising, and then getting them out there. By the time you take them through a program, or even if it was just something like today, just 3 or 4 hours. I mean, unbelievable what you must witness, from the nervous system to the heart rate to the relaxed facial features to what's happening to the neurochemistry. Like, you're like a scientist watching the lab.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And you're right, Ed. It doesn't take much, you know. Just sitting for 15 minutes or walking for 15 minutes without talking. You know, this is really, I think this is the big thing. You know, if I just invite people to take a few breaths, you know, notice the sound of the wind and the birds, and say, like, so we're just going to walk for 10 or 15 minutes. I just want to invite you to just pay attention and notice what's going on around you. you're right. I mean, it just sort of happens. And what's really amazing is when you just sit for a little while on Earth, you know, like it's pretty, I mean, trees are, I mean, what what is going on? How did what
Mhm.
is all this? You know, like you people start to have experiences of like, wow, like it's been a long time since I watched a, like, you know, for fall. You know, I like to sit people down, you know, for 15 minutes on a nice day like today. And most adults don't ever give themselves permission to sit for 15 minutes in the fall and experience fall without doing something. You know what I mean? Like just sitting and watching leaves fall is, when you're present, can be exquisite, better than any museum. You know, just the light filtering through the trees, a couple of leaves falling softly on the ground, and hearing that sound, and looking up and seeing the blue sky, and feeling the cool wind on your skin, and smelling the toasted pine needles on the ground. You know, we live on Eden. Like, I feel like this is what's so sad to me sometimes too, is that it's right here. The beauty of creation is like right before us. And I think sometimes folks are really moved because they feel like, gosh, like, how am I not seeing it? And here it is. It's so right in front of me. It's so simple. And I don't have to be in a national park, and I don't have to spend a lot of money on gear. I literally have to just walk outside and be still for 5 or 15 minutes, you know?
I really enjoy myself. I love the 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall, and being outside and seeing the magic of how it just inherently and organically unfolds, whether I wanted to or not. My job is to merge with the environment without any of the psychological baggage of man-made time. In the most simplistic terms,
Yep.
there's never enough time to do what I want to do, and there's plenty of time to do what I don't want to do. And as soon as we go outside, and whatever season it is, it just seems like our body is a part of our body is like the autonomic nervous system, which is warm and cold. So it knows the difference between winter and summer. Then you have the 2 seasons on the side. There's another part of the body, the pheromones up in the sinuses, they pick up the different smell of fall and winter compared to the different smell of the environment in spring and summer. And all of this, these pheromones begin to go off in our nostrils and sinuses, and our body just begins to become one with something beyond anything our mind or ego could even grasp. It's so powerful and loving.
Mm. Well said. Absolutely. Yeah, all the senses come into play. You know, where it's funny. Like sometimes if you think about it, like, you know, sometimes I don't. I've kind of over the last few years, I shied away from using the word nature too much a little bit. I mean, I don't. It's just funny because sometimes we talk about nature like it's something other than us. And just to your point, it's like we are so deeply in a state of interbeing. We are the earth. Like we literally are the planet Earth, you and I, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Our nervous system is the brain and nervous system of planet Earth, right? Like we evolved here on this planet. So like our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, our dreams, our creations are a manifestation of this planet. You know, like we didn't come from somewhere else. This is it. And to your point, you know, what the smells, all these feelings, like they just reinforce this really profound and like overwhelmingly psychedelic sometimes experience
Mm-hmm.
of being so deeply at one with the great self, you know, that is life. And that is such a deep part of our tradition, our yoga tradition, Ed. Like, you know, coming up in the Kripalu tradition, you know, tracing it back to the forest dwellers, you know, the Aranyakas and the Pashupatis, you know, these ancient people that lived in the forests and were doing pranayam out in the forest to feel more and more alive. How alive can I feel? Right? How much
Mm-hmm.
life force can I hold? And one of the things I really enjoy watching you is your posts of you jumping in the cold water out there.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
so inspiring because I can see you, man. And you're just so alive and putting yourself into deep contact with the cold water. And that's just one aspect of rewilding I also really enjoy.
Well, I love to think. I mean, I love to figure things out, but above all, I love to feel, and I love to be in my body. And when we go out into nature, we see this massive amount of complexity that's extremely simple for us to interact with if we choose to with our five sense perception. And I think the breath out of all the senses is kind of the master switch that allows us to merge with this environment that, on the most simplistic terms, is trying to become our friend. It's trying to help us. It's trying to get us unstuck, maybe if we've been a little off recently and or separate from our heart. The science out there in regard to being outside and what happens to your heart and what happens to your two prefrontal cortexes. Everybody needs to get outside. How can we help people hook up with you?
I'm pretty easy to find. So MicahMortali.com is my website. And I'm also have a page on the Kripalu website, so www.kripalu.org. You can follow me on Instagram, Micah Mortali, and so I'm pretty easy to find in those areas. And I leading a bunch of programs all the time. I've got a course coming up here at Kripalu, an online course called Befriending Winter, which is going to be starting up in November. It's a 4-week class, which I ran last year. And and I'll be doing I'm actually really excited. In January, I'm going to be doing a winter consciousness tracking and survival course at Kripalu. So for folks who are interested in learning how to build a fire in any conditions, building a winter shelter, tracking and connecting with the natural world during the winter time, it's going to be super fun. We're going to be out in the woods here, tracking and making fire, and it's going to be fun. So all kinds of ways, Ed.
We live at a time where most of us are running on high RPMs. Our heart rate's too high, our blood pressure is too high, we're not metabolizing our fat, we're only burning sugar. There's far too many thoughts that we can manage and stay coherent in the body and mind. And when you look at what you're offering folks in winter, if you're overheating inside, we have to go outside to counterbalance this temporal on internal overheating.
Yeah. It's there's no bad weather, just bad clothing, and
Right.
I think winter time is one of these seasons that some people really struggle with. Not me. I love it. I'm Pitta, man. I run hot all year. I struggle in the summertime. I tend to hibernate in summer. Winter is when I come out of my hibernation. And but I know that that's not true for everybody. So I like to share my enthusiasm for the season. Certainly getting outside, getting in the fresh air is very enlivening. It's very refreshing. Getting the sun, in our eyes and on our skin in the wintertime can feel really, really good. It can be a really helpful way to counterbalance seasonal affective disorder, to just walk outside regularly. But the other thing is, like, if there's snow on the ground, then every morning you go outside, there's all these stories from our relatives in the more than human world, their tracks that are everywhere in the snow. It's a great time to connect with the element of fire. And then finally, my thing I love the most about winter, and I'm waiting for me, the first frost has become a very sacred moment, because you never know when Jack Frost is coming. He picks his own day when he comes. But on that day, when you have your first frost, isn't it amazing that the water transforms from a liquid into a crystal, right? And what an incredible transition point that is, like, so fundamental, right? That the element of water transforms from a liquid into a solid. And then all the grass and everything just glistens in the morning light on that first frosty morning. It's a very sacred and very special threshold for me now. And so I just encourage everybody who's listening just to think about that and keep an eye on when that first frost comes and make a ritual out of going out there and really being mindful for that transition, because there is something so clean and so pure and so healing about the cold as it settles in on the land. And if we can just dress appropriately, and find ways to embrace our, what the Nordic people have shared with us about hygge, it can become just an awesome, awesome season.
So well said. Thank you. So humanity, we're at a little bit of a bridge here. We're a little bit of a jumping off point. And it's getting to be, there's a lack of transparency out there, and we really don't know where the truth lies and where should we, put our energy in. One of the great things I like going outside is Mother Nature can always be trusted. She has no axe to grind. She's here to support my life, my environment, my perception. She never tells a mistruth. Every time I go out into nature, even though I might not actually physically be able to see the difference between what's here Wednesday and what was here Tuesday, it's completely different if I had a microscope. It's completely not attached. It's actually a closed system that works on its own. How can we get folks this winter to really begin to go inside and start to trust their heart, trust their gut, be able to make that transition out of the quarantine and the mask and the sky is falling and we're not going to make it? And how can we get back out into nature and use this winter to transform ourselves in the next spring?
Just that, huh? Great question. Well, it's such a good question, Ed. And I really appreciated the question, because what you just shared really feels true to me, which is over the course of the last year and a half, I have begun to tried to migrate my awareness off of media and onto nature and the outdoors as much as possible, for the exact reason that you just shared, which is that when we go outside, when we log off the World Wide Web, and we log on to the Wood Wide Web, we are connected to source energy. When you go out onto the land, whether you're in a desert or a prairie or the forest, and there's nothing around you but what you're perceiving through your senses and the living earth, you're touching something eternal and timeless, which is the creative forces of the more than human world, right? And I think when we're on our phones and we're watching the news, and everything that's coming at us is coming through people's brains to you. It's all being filtered through human consciousness. So when we log off and we allow ourselves to plug into the consciousness of the cosmos through nature, through the outdoors, we are touching something that is truer, I would say. I think we're touching truth in a way, and purity, and the Tao, or prana, or spirit, however you want to describe it. And I think that is a vital experience that human beings actually deeply, deeply need. I feel that those experiences really fuel us and provide needed perspective. And I think perspective is a big one. When we go outside and you look up at the vault of the sky and you're looking into eternity, and you're feeling yourself a part of something that's so big you cannot wrap your mind around it, it puts human issues into perspective. So, ways that we can help people to do that, what I would encourage folks to do is make a little ritual, make a sit spot ritual in your daily routine. When you get up in the morning and you have that first cup of coffee or tea, if you can't get outside, then sit by your window and crack it open so you can get a little fresh air. If you can go outside, go sit in your backyard or on your fire escape for a few minutes with your coffee and bundle up with a blanket and just watch the day begin for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Watch the light change in the sky. Get to know the birds. Right? Listen to the sounds of the morning. If you can do that regularly, you're going to find the source of strength and inspiration that is going to enrich your life in ways you cannot even begin to imagine. It is such a powerful practice, the sit spot. 15 minutes a day with your coffee, just observing the day begin. You can do it at the end of the day as well. But I think of all the practices that I know, that would be the one practice that will probably pay the biggest dividends.
Wow. Well said. Thank you so much. The way I understand a lot of the ancient teachings was that the aspirants were trying to tune their nervous system to the energy of the earth. They were trying to tune their awareness to that inherent energy that just makes all of this work. You know, the energy that brings the sun up and the moon down, and then the moon chasing the sun. What brings high tide and what brings low tide? What changes the seasons of all living things here on earth? So these ancient warriors, spiritual warriors, were playing a big game. I mean, they were in it to win it. It wasn't just like, you know, I want to forget about a bad day at work. And these guys were trying to tune their self in, their entire self in, to what they were picking up and feeling at a profound level all the time. And when you think about what you're offering to folks, your hand is out, your heart is open, there is a bridge there. If you're willing to take the first step, I've got your hand, and I've got the first several steps of your next journey in these rewilding retreats. And I just, you know, it just cracks my heart open to know that there's people out there like you doing great service like that.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. It means a lot. Ed. I feel the same about you. And thank you. Yeah, it feels good to have found my offering and to be able to put it forth. You know, that's I think that's sometimes that's a hard journey to get to that place of knowing what your offering is and to distilling it into getting to a place where you can put it out there. And I do feel like I'm in that place now, and I'm really grateful for that. Yeah.
And when you drop into that slot, I mean, that's going to be the ride, you know, for the rest of this body. So I think folks feel that authenticity, and they'll tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and oh gosh, next thing you know, you got 16 assistants out there in the woods trying to hold the container together.
Yes, totally. That's sometimes how it works. Yeah, it's a lot of fun when you find what you love, right? I mean, you know, you're doing it. It's a joy to come into your work, right?
Well, I think at some point we really have to take a good look at the mirror and authenticate ourselves to some degree. Like, am I in alignment? You know, am I walking my talk? You know, where can I modify perception that might not be the best place for my attention to be? You know, where can I find ritual? Like, human beings, like, ritual is not a new word, okay? Ritual goes way back to where there wasn't anything other. There was never negative mental stress. The only stress you might have is you were going to be eaten or you needed to eat. It was just a very simplistic way of being. Yeah. And I can't think of a better way for us to heal our nervous systems than be outside and connect with our true source.
Yeah. Amen to that. Yeah, I think it's needed. I think people are hungry for it. You know, when we did our first case mold training, the School of Mindful Leadership training, we got hit with the nor'easter on the very first day. So like, this is like 9-day program outdoors, never been run before. We have 45 people in the program, And, here we go. And it's the whole entire thing is outside. And the first 48 hours were just torrential downpour and high winds. I was shocked because people came into the building for their meals. And I would sit there in the dining hall, look out the windows, and I watched them running back into the woods. The folks would come in, they'd eat fast, and then they'd put their rain gear back on, and they ran back outside. They did not want to be in that building.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks experienced that over, the last year and a half of like a deep hunger and a recognition that, 12, 13, 14 hours on a screen is inhumane. This is not, it's not humane. You can't expect a child to do that. You can't, could you imagine if we took like a gorilla out of the forest, out of its natural habitat, put it in a cement room with fluorescent lights, gave it an iPad and some processed food, and, came back 6 months later, and that would be a depressed gorilla. Right. And I think a lot of people are kind of in that boat these days. It's something's off. And I think the pandemic has given people a reset. And I think I saw a statistic the other day that 47% of the American workforce is changing jobs this year. Right. I think people are really thinking how do I want to live? How do I want my days? How do I want to spend my days? Do I want to be on a computer for 14 hours a day, or do I want to be outside more, moving my body?
Right.
And so the thing is, we all got to do what we've got to do, and everybody's got to try to find their way to make it work. And so, the main message I want to give to folks is that there are small things you can do to rewild your life. Walking barefoot for a couple of minutes a day, doing your sit spot, lighting that candle, doing your candle meditation, forage one food, that you can get to know that's wild. These little things add up and make a big difference.
They certainly do. And, there seems to be layers to not only what we're all going through as a species, but also internally, there's layers to us. We are layer-driven people. And when we think about how we can get more information revealed to us externally, so we can trust our life a little bit more and keep our feet on the ground. And we can find more layers inside that we can begin to discard that no longer serve the greater purpose of your birth and what you're doing in your life. There's no better choice than letting Mother Nature do the work for you.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending some of your time with us. You are really an enlightened young man, and you're helping thousands of people navigate these murky waters. Congratulations, sir.
Oh, thanks so much, Ed. I really appreciate it. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your go be great message. It is just a great message in this day and age to tell people to go be great, to go after their potential. I think it's incredibly inspiring. It's needed, man. So thank you for encouraging us to go be great and to find the power and have the confidence in ourselves. You really do that, Ed, and I love to watch it. And I really appreciate you. It's a beautiful, beautiful message. I'm honored to be on your show and to have this conversation with you. So thank you.
My pleasure. I want folks to go out there and get that book that you can see in the corner of this screen, this Rewilding book, and get it out. It's a great Christmas gift. Get it out to families and friends, blow this thing up, and then get up and hang out with Micah and just let go of anything that you're not. Attach yourself to everything that you've always been. Smile, let it all go. Crack that heart open, laugh, cry. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. Thank you, Micah.
Thanks, Ed. Great to be here.
I appreciate you, brother.
Me. You too.
So
man.
long.
All right.
Peace. That was great.